Fraud. From a violation of a law to a large-level scam to a direct threat to public interest, it can happen in many different forms. If it weren't for people who have the courage to step forward and report these wrongdoings, many cases of fraud would go unprosecuted. These individuals have become known as whistleblowers. Since 1963, the federal government has taken significant measures to protect the rights of these citizens from retaliation, and today, laws are in effect that encourage people to step forward and do the right thing.
The whistleblower laws protect the whistleblowers from retaliation by their employees. There's tremendous risk associated with blowing the whistle. And by having laws in place, it allows counsel to protect employees from adverse reactions by their employers. And it allows the whistleblowers to really do a great public service in protecting the public coffers.
One of the primary laws that help defend individuals with knowledge of fraud committed against the federal government is the False Claims Act.
The False Claims Act protects against any fraud committed against the federal government. And many states also have their own False Claims Act. There's approximately 27, 28 states that have their own False Claims Act today. And that's literally for any fraud that is committed by contractors. It protects against Medicare, Medicaid fraud, defense contracting, general services contracts. And the tax reward statute protects specifically against tax fraud. And that is a federal statute. Very few states have state tax reward statutes, although New York now does. And then the SEC law protects against securities fraud violations.
Since 1985, under the False Claims Act, the federal government has been able to recover billions of dollars. In fact, $3 billion in 2010 alone.
One of the primary areas that the largest recoveries have come in over the last 5 to 10 years has been in the pharmaceutical fraud area, and there have been very large recoveries in those cases. There's been huge recoveries just throughout the healthcare industry, both under Medicare and Medicaid. Today you're seeing much more cases in the financial fraud area. You also see them in the defense contracting area, and those are brought primarily or exclusively under False Claims Acts. But in addition to those, we're seeing a real uptick in the tax fraud and the securities fraud areas.
Experts say the Qui Tam, a civil provision of the False Claims Act, has generated a greater number of cases, especially in the past few years.
People that blow the whistle are under tremendous stress. There's tremendous risk. So what the law does, it encourages them to come forward by incentivizing them, providing them a reward, and also protecting them against retaliation. And what that does is it enables the government to get an insider's view of what is actually going on with the fraud. So that cooperative effort has really seen an exponential increase in the recoveries that the federal government has been able to achieve under the False Claims Act. And that has really been the granddaddy of the whistleblower laws, the False Claims Act. And since the False Claims Act has been so effective, we've had passage of the tax whistleblower law and the SEC whistleblower law.
Experts also say newly enacted provisions, such as the IRS and SEC whistleblower laws, are enabling the government to bring criminal charges against people who commit fraud.
Well, these laws affect criminal charges because when an individual brings a whistleblower claim, they work cooperatively with the government, and the government then investigates that claim along with the individual. And under any of these laws, the False Claims Act, the tax whistleblower law, the SEC whistleblower law. And depending on what is discovered during the course of that investigation and the ensuing lawsuits, either criminal charges or civil charges, or in many cases, both criminal and civil charges are brought. And they can result in certainly criminal fines. In the pharmaceutical cases, there have been huge criminal fines assessed against companies.
Federal as well as state statutes and regulations have long recognized the value of safeguarding whistleblowers in a wide array of fraudulent matters.
The most common fraud cases against the federal government, in addition to tax fraud, which has its own statute, are under the False Claims Act. So those would be anything where the federal government is actually involved in paying for services or products. So Medicare, Medicaid, pharmaceutical fraud, medical device fraud, defense contracting, general services administration. We're now seeing upticks in cases in financial fraud where the government has insured mortgages. So it's a whole panoply of fraud cases that involve the federal government.
For the last 15 years, Philadelphia-based law firm Kenney McCafferty has been representing whistleblowers in some of the largest recoveries ever under the False Claims Act.
Our firm has been counsel to a whistleblower in the Pfizer case, which was a recovery of over $2 billion, which is the largest recovery in a whistleblower case to date, as well as representing a whistleblower against Eli Lilly, which was over $1 billion, which was the second largest whistleblower recovery to date. We've also represented whistleblowers in the biotechnology area, which in the Cephalon case, which was approximately $500 million recovery.
From healthcare to pharmaceutical to tax fraud, the experienced and dedicated lawyers with Kenney McCafferty are experts in representing whistleblowers in all kinds of industries.
Our firm is comprised of trial lawyers. I was a federal prosecutor for a number of years. We also work with and have in our firm former IRS agents, forensic accountants, and we have a full-size firm. We are able to work with whistleblowers because we have a history now of 15 years of investigating these cases, of trying fraud cases both as prosecutors and as relators counsel. So we bring a full-service set of lawyers to these issues and are able to run complex and fund complex investigations.
If you have knowledge of fraud or a false claim against the government, contact Kenney McCafferty. Call 1-800-533-1015 or visit quitam-lawyer.com.